Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about drones in Canada. I'm going to be covering what drones are, what you can use them for, basic rules for flying, how to get your basic level drone license, some tips I wish I knew before I started flying drones. I have flown drones before, but I definitely do not consider myself an expert in this topic, so if you're just getting into this hobby, let's be beginners together. Drone regulations can be a bit confusing and complex because they vary on where you are, the size of the drone you're using, what you're using the drone for. So this video is just a beginner-friendly overview on the very high-level basics of dronage. I'll leave some helpful Transport Canada links in the description so you can look at to get a bit more information on the content I'm talking about, but I encourage you to check the regulations and the specific rules for what you will be flying your drone for, your specific drone, and your drone area that you're flying in. So let's begin with, what is a drone? A drone is a type of unmanned aerial vehicle, or a UAV. Essentially, it's an aircraft that doesn't have a pilot on board. Instead, it's controlled remotely from the ground, from a handheld controller. And this means that if you are flying a drone, you are now a pilot. And what can you use drones for? Most people think of drones, they think of aerial photography, and it's definitely one of the biggest uses. It's a super cool photography tool and way to get into that as a hobby, because you can capture stunning photos and videos that aren't possible from the ground. Whether you're traveling, hiking, camping, you can see the world from a totally different perspective, and it's a really cool hobby to pick up on. As awesome as they are for the recreational tools and skills, they're also really useful in engineering and construction services. Drones can be used to inspect bridges, roads, landslides, maybe a site, a project area, and they can take lots of photos, and maybe if there was a bad geotechnical hazard in the area, we can fly drones in to assess the area without putting people at risk, and we can see what is going on. Surveyors can also use drones to make 3D terrains of area way faster than traditional surveying. If you're just starting out in engineering consulting and looking for a skill to help boost your resume and become an asset to the office, as well as maybe developing a super fun hobby that increases your hand-eye coordination skills, I think drones is the place for you. Like I said before, there are many types of drones and different classifications within Canada. In this video, I'm just going to stick mostly to micro drones under 250 grams and also small drones, which are 250 grams up to 25 kilograms. I've never flown anything that big. Unless you are an expert working on a specific project with specific instructions, a lot of what I'm going to talk about applies for all drones. And this includes the following recommended flight points listed from Transport Canada. If you break one of these rules, there's definitely large fines and penalties that you risk taking on. So I would be very familiar and comfortable with those previous set of rules from Transport Canada. So a little bit more about micro drones, because I think that's the perfect place to start for a beginner, is they are under 250 grams. Drone companies know this, and they make specific micro drones from really small ones to just pushing the limit at 249 grams. For these drones, there is no license required or exam required to fly, and you don't even have to register them. However, you are still responsible for flying safely and following the previous set of laws, as well as regular laws such as trespassing laws, privacy laws, and fines and penalties do still apply for micro drones if you are flying them recklessly and unsafely. Because there isn't a huge commitment or risk involved with flying micro drones, being so small and not having to take the time to study for a test, I think it's a great place to start out in your drone journey. You could even borrow somebody's drone to see if you enjoy flying it as well. Next up is the small drones. These are drones 250 grams and above, up to 25 kilograms. These, to fly recreationally, you will need to review the specific set of rules for flying in basic operations, as well as obtain a basic drone pilot certification. To obtain the basic drone pilot certification, you need to be at least 14 years old and take an online exam through Transport Canada. The exam currently costs $10.17, so pretty reasonable, and it consists of 35 multiple choice questions that you will have 90 minutes to complete. You'll need a score of above 65% to pass, so it's not the regular 50, you will need 65% and above. A great thing about this license as well is it doesn't expire. You do it once and you have it for life, but I really recommend keeping up on your drone knowledge and your drone skills before you pick up big jobs using these. Okay, now that we've covered a lot of the pre-flight certifications and information, let's say you have your friend's micro drone that you're borrowing, or you just got your certification for basic drones. Some things to watch out for before you start flying is to review those previous set of points that I put in from Transport Canada to make sure you know those and you understand those, as well as taking a look at your surroundings. This is really important that you make sure you have a clear takeoff and landing area. If you are landing them in a different spot than you take off in, make sure that area will be clear as well, and also make sure that your takeoff area is suitable for landing if you were to return back to that point. You want to have good weather with no rain and not a lot of wind as well, because wind will sometimes overpower your drones, especially the very small ones. I personally won't fly in much wind of any. You need to be sure that there's plenty of daylight remaining for your flight path. It is not great to fly drones at night. There's another set of rules and regulations that you'll need to follow that. So as a beginner, I recommend sticking to flying drones in the daylight. And you also need to be aware of any obstacles within your flight path, such as trees, power lines, tall fences, cars, anything that could be in your way you want to be aware of before you start flying. It might seem like a lot of prep work, but a couple minutes of prep work can possibly save you hours and struggles and headaches later on in your flight. Like I said, I am still a beginner drone operator, in my opinion, and some things that really helped me when I did start flying and I would like to share to other beginners are a couple points to come up. The first is to charge everything fully. And this might sound a little bit obvious because of course your drone needs batteries to fly. One thing I did not realize quite at the start was that you need to charge the controller as well as the drone batteries. You cannot just have one, you need to have both of them fully charged. So make sure they're all charged up before you start flying. Speaking about the controller, another point that really helped me when I was beginning is to turn the controller onto cinematic mode. Okay, just changed my camera setting. Now you can see on the controller here, it says Cine, Normal, and Sport. It might say this, it might say Cinematic, Normal, and Sport, or it might just say CNS. As a beginner, one of the biggest things that helped me was to ensure I was switched onto the cinematic mode. This is really helpful because it slows down the drone's acceleration and movements, making it so much easier to control. Once you're comfortable with that, I'm not even comfortable entirely ready to move on to the next level, but if you do become super comfortable in the cinematic mode, next bump it to the normal mode. And then if you become comfortable with that, you can put it in the sport mode. I've just tried to fiddle with it in the sport mode and the drones whip around. So I definitely recommend that as a beginner, you keep your remote in the cinematic mode for an easier, less stressful flight path. I mentioned this before, but it's so important. I'm going to mention it again. Another really good tip is to choose your launch site carefully. Take a minute walking around the area that you want to fly your drone around to ensure that you are selecting the best launch site. One thing to think ahead about with your launch site is if something happens where your batteries die unexpectedly or there's a bad connection between the controller and the drone, your drone is automatically going to fly back to the spot where it launched from. So you want to ensure that your drone will be able to autonomously get back to this launch site if needed. So minimal obstacles, clear path, big area. Find your launch site carefully. My fourth tip is to take it slow. When you first take off, don't immediately fly your drone hundreds of meters away. Going back to that Transport Canada point, you want to keep it within your sight anyway, but start by hovering your drone around eye level and getting used to the controls. And my fifth tip is also just sharing how I kind of understand the controls on the drone. So on a typical controller, there's different modes that you can change it if you become more advanced, but I'm pretty, on the tip of what I've seen on a typical controller, the left stick, the joystick, controls the altitude and the rotation. Everything along the y-axis, so straight up and down, the imaginary straight line coming from the drone. You can push it up to have the drone climb, pull it down to have the drone go this way, and if you turn it left to right, the drone spins on the axis this way or this way. It keeps the drone it controls the drone, in this manner. The right stick controls the X-plane movement this way. Everything along the flat X-plane. It moves the drone forward, it moves the drone back, it can go right, left. Keeping the drone at whatever altitude you had set with your left stick, your right stick is going to move it this way. So again, left stick is this axis, up, down, rotate, and your right stick is the flat axis. So this way, this way, this way, this way, but keeping the same level that you set with your left stick. Become super comfortable moving them independently so you know which stick does which, and then you can slowly start moving them together and you can get cool spinny rotating videos and you can go up and forward at the same time, but start working them independently around eye level, not very far away from you. Well, thanks for coming along with me to learn about micro drones, small drones, basic operations, and now we are coming to the end of the video. And I just want to reiterate that drones are an incredibly fun hobby that can also be really powerful tools in engineering and construction services with mapping and inspections and so much more. Starting with a micro drone under 250 grams is a great way to learn the basics. And if you decide you want to get into it more, the next step would be to get your basic drone pilot certification. I hope this video gives you a good introduction into getting started. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.